You're listening to the Vocabit podcast, where I help students improve their vocabulary for the SAT, ACT, and life itself using my unique and research-backed story-based method. On this podcast, I'm sharing the best tips and tricks for a more enriched vocabulary and pain-free test day. Hello, and welcome to episode 57 of the Vocabit podcast. I'm Erica Abbott, a former English and history teacher, the author of the young adult novel Ahead of Her Time, and the founder of the eponymously named vocabulary company Vocabit. We're in the last 2 episodes of our writing series, and today we're talking about editing. I have some unconventional advice for you here, and I can see both sides of it, so go with whatever works for you. But the popular advice today is just get the words on paper. You can edit it later, but you can't edit a blank page. All first drafts are garbage anyway, so just get your words in and keep going. My favorite meme of this is from The Emperor's New Groove, and it's like, writers today. Oh, right, the poison for Cusco, the poison chosen especially to kill Cusco, Cusco's poison. If you do this with essays, just write a bunch of random words to get them on paper, I can almost guarantee that you'll end up with a terrible essay or you'll just straight up have to redo it. If you're writing a book, I kind of feel the same. In my experience, at least, the editing process is brutal when you play fast and loose with that first draft. So, contrary to popular opinion today, I would argue that it's okay to write a more measured first draft and save yourself a headache in edits. That does not mean the words need to be perfect the second you write them down, but the big difference is you kind of keep working on that sentence or scene until you find it acceptable before you move on. So you kind of play with and self-edit as you go instead of just kind of typing down whatever's in your head and carrying on. It definitely makes the editing process easier, but I think it might even make your overall process faster too, because you don't have to reread an admittedly garbage first draft and decide which sentences you want to keep and change and rewrite. Now, I mentioned that I can see both sides of this, and I will admit that there are 2 issues with editing as you write. The first is that it can be somewhat paralyzing to try to write something longer than anything else you've ever written and do a good job while you're at it. So the just get any words on paper approach lets you tackle these challenges separately. First, you get the length, then you get the quality in editing. And that's totally valid, and if it works for you, great. The second counter argument is more technical. The way I personally self-edit while writing is I reread everything constantly. It's like you're creating a movie, and that rereading is the equivalent of pressing play. It's easy to see what's off when the movie's running, but if you're stuck in kind of an isolated screen grab, it's harder to spot errors. But that rereading, which makes the editing a lot easier, is hard to do with a long piece of work, like a book. It's not really a big deal for an essay or short story, but you can't constantly be rereading your book. The way around this is to only reread what you did that day or from the start of the scene, but there's also a problem with that. This can make your scenes feel a little standalone. It's really weird, but it's almost like your process shows up in the final product. The scenes don't seem to flow into each other quite as well. So I'm writing my second book now, and my hope is that by having a really solid outline this time around, the scenes will flow into each other a little bit better, even if I tackle it in blocks. You can definitely see in Ahead of Her Time that I was like, I want to write about a felucca party. I want to write about the time I got sick or whatever else, because some of Noor's experiences draw on mine. And the scenes feel kind of like standalone stories. They don't always flow into one another. Hopefully the final product ended up being okay, but I'm definitely trying to make some changes for book 2. Like I said at the very beginning, my biggest goal here is to eliminate monstrous rounds of edits, which I'm endeavoring to do by having a better outline and self-editing a bit more as I go. Again, you need to do what works best for you. I'm just pulling back the curtain on what I'm doing and what I'm learning as I write my first few books. Hopefully it helps you if you're a writer as well. I would love to save you some of the mistakes I've made. Good luck, and I'll see you on Thursday.